Welcome to Motorbike Mondays, episode number 15. This is Evan from Race Tech Electric.
This is Brady from Seaweed and Gravel.
And this is Jared from Seaweed and Gravel. And with us today we have...
This is Ian Grist from La Mesa.
Jared from San Diego.
That is my twin brother, Ian. He doesn't really have any value to add for motorcycle-related topics, but maybe he can say something interesting. We'll see. Anyways, well, he has podcast experience from doing the D-Cast, so you can come up with something interesting to say. Yeah, like that one that clip that you sent me of the party review.
Public office and those get
Oh yeah, nobody would get a job if that podcast was still up. We actually had to take that podcast down when everybody graduated because if they searched our names, nobody would get hired.
Thanks for letting no one in on that inside joke.
Everybody just turned this podcast off.
Yeah, probably. Well, if they haven't already, I think we're safe because we've said
like
plenty
30
of
seconds
stupid
in.
things. Not this episode. They just have to go listen to the previous 14 and they can come up with
Oh,
plenty
there
of
you
things
go.
to have shut it off for.
All right.
All right. Anyways, so tonight we're going to be talking about preventative maintenance. We've probably covered like pieces of these topics before, but we've never really focused on them or given you a list. So we're going to go through that, a bunch of just various things that you should be checking or doing, and give you some details about them. But what are we going to do first?
What's in the shop?
Brady was too busy vaping and didn't even get mad that time. All right, who wants to start?
Jared, you want to set us off?
Jared, you go. It's always really it's really depressing by the end of Jared's
Yeah.
What's in the Shop.
We can recover better.
Yeah, everybody will be happy by the time we finish.
I've got a CT70 with a 140cc Lifan motor in the shop.
Those things are sweet. Those
Yeah,
are
they're
cool
fun.
little bikes.
It's a buddy of mine.
Is
and-
the Lifan like a drop-in motor? Because
Yeah,
it's like a
it's
knockoff
a
of the Honda
Chinese-
motor,
Yeah,
right?
Lifan
Lifan is
Yeah.
like a Chinese company, and they make
But they're
they make
copies
drop-in motors
of the
for
Honda
a lot of these
motor,
bikes.
right?
Yeah, but the CT70 was a 70cc. They make it.
Oh, is that why it's called a CT70?
Yeah. Oh. I don't think I get normal interactions
Hey, well, I
very
said
well.
I said that. It
No,
has
I
a
appreciate.
140cc motor
I'm
in
glad
it,
you explained that.
but Dick,
Okay, why did he replace the motor?
because he wanted more balls in this bike.
Chinese,
it's not
the
only-
Chinese reliability was an upgrade, or
Well, if he explains, like, it's essentially it's a build.
Yeah,
It's got like a
it's got everything.
inverted
It's got a
front end
it's
on
got
it.
a, yeah, it's got
what
disc
from
brakes.
what?
Because people
It's-
get crazy with these CT70s,
Yeah.
man.
What's the
Like,
front
mini
end
bikes
off
are
of?
freaking huge.
It's made for this
Oh,
application.
people make the parts for
Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
shit.
So it's got an aftermarket swing arm. It's got a full like knockoff Yoshi looking pipe.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a little Honda Trail.
Like the Trail 90.
They make a V twin motor for that thing.
No.
Yes,
What?
that bolts in.
That's
Yep.
insane.
How? The motor's like part of the frame on those.
Yeah, it's
Is the other cylinder like pointed to the ground?
Yeah.
it's pointed down.
You have to like raise the bike to clear the bottom
well,
cylinder.
it's I think it might be flat and then up like this. So V twin.
So it's like a 20-degree V twin.
Look it up.
That's got to be pretty intense.
I'll have to check it out. That's interesting.
But it's a pretty cool bike. It's,
are you doing
It's
there?
basically a trade. Well, my buddy had a shop, a metal fab shop, and he was building this. He was doing this bike. It's basically a bunch of bolt-on stuff, and him and his partner didn't really work out, so they split ways, and he took everything out of his shop. And my welder broke at this time when I was helping him move everything out. And so as a trade for letting us use his sweet Miller 350P indefinitely, I had to finish putting this thing back together for him.
oh.
6 months later.
Yeah, because he's like a pipeline welder, and he's out of town all the time, so he doesn't have the time to do it.
Is
I
it
don't really either.
like? Is it working fine?
I don't know. It hasn't ran yet. I mean, it should. So
Yeah, I mean, you can buy those motors like the 140. Is it 140 or 150? 140. You can buy those brand new,
Yeah.
assembled, ready to go for like $300.
I think it's a little cheaper
wow.
than that, actually.
Yeah, I think so too.
Huh.
But I mean, they make the exact bolt-in motor, the 70. Then they make like a 110, and then they make a 140. They make the V twin,
Yeah.
and then they make these motors for multiple other bikes as well.
Talk it directly into your mic.
Smaller CC
It's not
bikes.
picking you up very well.
Well, how's that?
Much better.
All right. So that's what I'm working on. The CB550 is in test mode. I rode it here tonight. It's running pretty good. It's a little bit lean, but it's going to about an hour outside of Denver, so I think that would be fine.
When is that going out?
It ships April 1st.
How are you shipping it?
Motorcycle Transport Company.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's shipping out April 1st, so I get time to test it. Hopefully I don't crash it.
Does a customer pay for shipping?
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah, so customer...
How much is that to Denver?
I don't know.
Shouldn't be much. Probably like $300.
Might be a little more than that.
Well, from here to New York, it's like
I've gotten quotes of
$650.
6 to 7 across the country.
Yeah.
I looked at bringing a BMW back from...
Hey, I know of a
From New
BMW
York or
R90/6 for sale.
Yeah, I heard of a really sweet one on Craigslist.
We're
It
not
was
getting into that
like
anymore.
a Bitter's Dream or something.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that what it's called?
super sweet bike. Seems like it's got tons of problems though.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about it.
Probably worth like $500.
I just need a few more details and I'd be sold.
Inside jokes that no one
No.
knows but us.
Well, I've talked about it. The R90 Nightmare project that was in the shop here for like ever finally went out the door 2 weeks ago, which was awesome. And it's up for sale on Craigslist, and the ad was just funny.
But yeah, that's it's really all I'm working on right now. I'm about to start my next build probably next week. Actually, let's be honest, I probably won't start it for another couple weeks. But
Which is what?
Another 550.
550?
yeah, CB550.
Huh.
Yeah, it'll be
Good-
cool
good to
though.
guess.
Guy wants something a little different.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
Evan, Brady, Ian?
Let's see. I have. Let's see. Well, it should be easy. I have one bike in there right now. I have the 77 Yamaha XS 750 that I'm working on. I think I mentioned last week that I finally am able to give my full attention to it, and it's showing. So I'm kicking ass on it. I just finished.
yeah, those pipes look good.
Yeah, I just finished the pipes on it. I think I mentioned before, where the XS 750 is a triple, and I made a 3-to-3 exhaust where they all three.
Did you
exhaust
use those
meets
pipes
the end.
off of the one I had?
Yeah, those worked out genius.
I'm trying to remember what they were like.
Well, pretty much all I needed, because the bike came with a 3-to-1 exhaust.
Yeah.
And so what I was planning on doing was just making just the full exhaust from scratch. But
The ones I had were a
Evan had
2
the
into 1
or
and a
3
1
to
into
2.
1. Yeah,
Yeah,
3 into 2.
Yeah, 3
there.
and 2. So 2 of them were connected
Yeah.
and went into a 1, and then there was a single.
But
one.
weren't they
People
set
can
up?
do math. I mean, there's not too many.
Oh,
other
I'm telling Evan.
configurations
I'm
out
trying to
there.
They
remember.
were chrome. They had a couple bends in them.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
yeah.
So pretty
Weren't
much,
they meant to go to either side of the bike?
Yeah,
Right?
so pretty much with the 3-to-3, they collected like towards the front, like
Yeah.
the bottom of the front of the pipe, and so I would just have to. Actually, those ones are really funky. They had like the middle cylinder split into a Y with
Yes,
like
that's
half
right.
diameter, maybe like 3/8 pipe, and split into each outside cylinders or outside pipes. It was really weird.
Yeah.
Definitely had to get rid of those anyways. But so
How
Evan
big is
had-
that in millimeters?
I don't know. I don't know the measurements of that.
9,001.
No, it's probably
14 maybe? 12, 14?
I was off a little bit.
But so Evan had
13?
the 3-to-2 exhaust set up that I swapped from him, and was able to just cut off the connector or collector from the where it's split or collected into one from the two, and pretty much did half of the work for me. So I just had to route where the pipes led to, which saved me a great deal of time.
We work smart, not hard.
And yeah, so they all end up on one side, staggered with some like bell end or flared tips at the end. It's
like the ones that I had on the TX.
I haven't even showed you, Evan. I'll send a photo to Evan. You can probably post it on the blog if you guys want to see it.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But yeah, so got those done, and I finished up the underbelly or undertail section for the battery mount, starter relay, and I just have to finish up the tail light mount, which I'm actually going to mount onto the seat. And yeah, I pretty much I could probably break it down and get into paint now and paint prep for like on the frame and everything, but I'm kind of waiting just till I look over the bike a few more times to make sure I have everything before I bust it down into paint, because it's really sad grinding fresh paint to fix something.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So working on that. And Evan will probably have it in his shop not too long after paint to do electrical or do the wiring on it.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool.
So
I like those bikes.
I've already made like routes a few spots to go wiring through the frame. Really easy. It's a straight shot. So doing all that prep work, which is another thing to remember if you are planning on hiding electrical. Plan ahead at this stage before you go into paint or powder. And let's see. Yeah, Jared and I might be doing kind of a dual build together.
Oh, yeah, that's coming up.
There's a client in...
Well, we are doing a dual build.
Yeah, pretty soon at least. There's a client in Germany who's looking for a build, and so we're probably going to tackle that one together because he wants it for riding season over there. And we have got to get rushing on that, I'm sure. But he wants probably like a... We're looking at like a CB 360 twin or something.
Do they provide the bike?
Sometimes. Not often.
Yeah.
Probably not if he's in Germany.
Yeah. Rarely. It's happened to me one time.
But they'll permission you to go find one to start with?
Yeah, it's all it's kind of in the
build
original
cost.
build quote. But yeah, so that's what I have currently in my shop.
Well, I have been working on the little RS 100 two-stroke that I picked up a couple weeks ago, and I wrote a blog post about it on the website the other day, so you can look at that. There's a bunch of pictures and stuff. I'm going to try and kind of document it while I get it like rebuilt on there, so I'll keep putting up pictures and ideas and whatever I'm working on. So right now, I got new tires on it, the Shinko, what number are those? 314 or something?
241s, I think.
241s?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. They're like a dual sport kind of tire with real blocky tread. They look really cool. So I got tires on it, and new tubes, and then I fixed the brake lever mount is done, and then I just started going through it. So the bike's all torn apart on the lift right now and doing a bunch of stuff. I'm going to do a 12-volt conversion because it was a 6-volt system and the 6-volt battery was dead. And it charging system worked, but the 6-volt stuff's just pretty crappy. So I'm going to rewind the stator coils and then replace all the lights and put a new battery and a rectifier on it. So I'll actually post up all the details on that. So if you're ever looking to do a 6-volt conversion on one of these old bikes, I'll have a lot of info on how to do that. So there's really not a whole lot to it other than replacing the original rectifier and regulator. Actually, I'm not even positive this bike had a regulator. It might have just been the headlight. So anyways, there's not a whole lot to it. You got to replace all the bulbs and stuff. You can't use any of the 6-volt bulbs with a 12-volt battery, but it'll be some good info if anybody's ever looking to do that. So I'll make sure to like document all of that stuff. Anyways, that's about it. I don't have anything else interesting in here other than the never-ending
except for me
RMZ 250 motor rebuild project that just collects dust. Oh yeah, those pipes are awesome. That's really cool. Yeah, definitely send me that picture. That's awesome. So yeah, anyways, that's it. Nothing else real interesting. I've been doing a lot of hand-wound stators recently. I just did one for a custom stator for a KLX 650. So that was kind of fun. Yeah, anyways, that's about it. Nothing else exciting. So let's talk about maintenance. Somebody give me the list because I don't know where we're starting here. Okay, so we're going to talk about preventative maintenance stuff. Let's see. Okay, we'll start with oil and fluids. So when you get a new bike that's new to you, you should, I think we've probably talked about that before. It's really smart to do an oil change and fluid change. That includes brake fluid, front and rear, coolant, and oil.
Depending
just
on
so you know that you've got like a good starting point, because if the bike's new to you, you don't really know how old any of the fluids are, when they've been changed, or what kind of condition they're in.
Yeah.
What about like? See, we don't really have like exact maintenance intervals for this stuff because it really depends on the bike. But
yeah, so you want to look in your manual and everything. But you know, when
oil change 3,000 miles is always safe.
Yeah,
you certainly can't go wrong doing that.
Well, I do that like on my Harley. I do every 3,000.
Yeah.
But I think on older bikes, thinking back,
That's around 3,000.
I always do 3
Well,
just to be
honestly,
safe.
well, honestly, I never do it. No, I'm just kidding.
Even 3,000's always been kind of that base
Yeah.
number. Everyone will tell you. Like, say on vehicles, people even say, yeah, come back every 3,000 miles.
Yeah.
On modern bikes as well, like you could probably get away with much longer. I mean, there's been a lot of improvements in not only efficiency, but the compounds in oil.
Well, I
So you
think
could
even
go,
the owner's
say-
manual for newer bikes that
It's probably
specifies synthetic oil say like 6,000 mile
Oh
oil
yeah,
changes.
synthetic
and
oil
stuff.
you can go. I mean, much longer.
So I don't know. Look at your manual. Sorry, say that into the microphone. What about synthetic oil on an older bike? You still want to do 3,000 with that?
In my opinion, there's no need to put synthetic oil in
I don't think
oil
so.
motorcycle.
And I mean, there's that's a long
Not in an older
conversation
bike.
and a lot of different points.
It's an opinionated conversation.
which it shouldn't be realistically because you're applying it to a real application,
right.
But I don't think it's really been talked about enough to where people there's usually one sway to another, and not a lot of people have a lot of information backing up why.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't go into that.
No,
conversation.
it's
yeah,
not
let's
worth
just stick to
discussing.
conventional motorcycle, motor oil, and
Or at least
tranny oil.
Not even conventional, the user or like a manufacturer like specified oil
Yeah.
for that motor.
1040 and 2050.
Okay, then you can go talk to Mr. O'Reilly because he did not carry it in his store.
I buy my motorcycle
But
oil at O'Reilly. It's
Not the O'Reilly that I went to.
all right.
not if you're
your
buying
O'Reilly's
1040,
your
so-
O'Reilly's probably still a Kragen. I wish all O'Reillys were still Kragen. Kragen was way
What?
better.
So you think that the store said Kragen on the front, but I just decided that it was O'Reilly's instead?
No, because O'Reilly used to be Kragen.
It was Craig and O'Reilly's.
It was Kragen Auto Parts.
I know, but you said that it was probably
All right,
still...
anyway.
I'm just saying I can read.
You know,
It
we're
was
wasting
O'Reilly.
a lot of time, what we think is going to be a short podcast, but when
This
has
is
that
how it
ever
always
been the
happens.
case?
The other thing that annoyed me was they had oil on sale. They had this gigantic sign that said Quaker State oil was on sale for $15 for a 5-quart jug. And so I went in there, and they didn't have a single bottle of Quaker State in the entire
Yeah,
building.
But they got you in there.
Yeah, but they didn't even have it. Not a single one. And
That's
I was like,
Walmart
whoa.
for you.
I thought it was ridiculous.
You want
Anyways.
to make sure you're putting motorcycle oil in though, because
definitely motorcycle
it has
oil.
special additives for your wet clutch, and I mean you can get by with running regular motor oil if you have to.
You can test
I
the
use
motor on it.
Castrol
A little bit.
GTX and everything. I've never had a problem.
They make Castrol GTX for
no,
motorcycles.
not the motorcycle specific one. I'm not saying you shouldn't use motorcycle
Right.
specific oil, but
I've
I've
done
never
it too,
noticed a problem.
but I'm saying
doing
that motorcycle oil has additives for the clutch. That
But have you
need.
ever had a clutch slip or like noticed any sort of issue from
No,
not
but I
using
didn't
it?
run it for,
I have, but
for
I
a
don't know
long
if
time.
it's you can judge it based on that.
Yeah, that's where I learned that. It was Dirtbike Dave told me he always used Castrol GTX. It's like standard oil in everything, 2050, and so ever since he told me that, I've always done it.
Of course, he sold you a nightmare bike.
Yeah.
That's our family for 5 years.
That's true. That is true.
But,
and then he moved, and I never got any help with that thing again.
But so there's other oils that you want to take into account. Like if your bike has a separate transmission or primary.
If you have a Harley,
Yeah, so Harleys, they have motor oil and then they have primary oil, brake fluid. If you have like hydraulic clutch, you know, if you're getting into the early 80s bikes and up, you might have clutch fluid.
What about brake fluid? I had a question about brake fluid.
Sorry.
Need a microphone?
Yeah, I have a general question.
Well, hold on. And then there's one more. If you have like a shaft drive differential fluids.
or like I don't know what fluid that is. A lot of manufacturers,
Yeah,
a lot
gear
of
oil.
manufacturers have like a specific weight that they recommend to use.
And then fork oil as well, which you can
Yeah.
use ATF.
ATF or
I usually just do fork oil.
Using real fork oil on ATF.
Tell sometimes, I think.
All right, so Ian, what was your question?
But that KLR has ATF in it right now, and it,
yeah.
put
I mean, it's
ATF
a
in
similar
my
weight.
KLR?
It's a similar weight
Should have
oil.
told me
So
that before I bought
Well,
it.
it was my KLR at the time. I can put whatever I want.
Anyway, brake fluid. Do you think it makes a big difference if it's stamped on the master cylinder up there? It says use .4 or whatever. Does it matter if you use .3? You think that's ever going to make a
Well,
difference?
I think it makes a difference when it says .5 because .5 is the synthetic.
it's this, which
But
don't-
Harleys use that. Like that's like the only one that I really know of.
Well, brake fluid.
It's higher than what it says. Like it says .3, use 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But don't use 5.
Yeah, don't
Well,
mix them either.
Honestly, I would say I would even recommend using .5 in general, even if it says it's on there. I mean, because it's silicone based, which silicone.
Only a brand new bike is going to say .5 on it.
I know.
Nothing older than
Yeah,
who knows 2000.
but
maybe is what even-
that's another conversation. I mean, there are actual and the molecular base of .5 fluid is oxygen, and so the purpose of it is to remove oxygen out of the line, so there's no
Squishy brakes.
yeah, squishy brakes.
Sorry, Bill Nye. Could you tell us more about the molecular base of that?
I'm just saying it is a very faulty, and it was a mistake from the beginning. And I'm going to follow my own advice and not get into this more because we are going to be pushing for time again.
I could go downstairs and power up my electron microscope if you need to do some research.
No, it's
I'm
already
trying to
been-
help. I'm
it's
just trying
been
to.
done.
Coming from
already.
the guy who built a freaking rotor reader off of diodes and a fucking wood lathe.
What did you call it, Ian? Like a dorktron or something?
A cross-articulating dingle arm.
They're talking about Evan's like
Stator reader
mad
or whatever.
scientist stator tester.
Hadron collider.
Anyway,
Um,
so brake fluid, if it's an old bike, you want to put new brake fluid. They say to change your brake fluid every like 5 years.
No, it's brake fluid designed to last for 3 years and then starts
Oh,
to break
maybe
down.
3 years.
You can still use that fluid, but there will be a slight decrease in performance.
Yeah, and you want
Um,
to change it because the thing is air and water getting into it. Water breaks down brake fluid, so
Well,
know.
and it corrodes as
Yeah,
well.
and it corrodes
so
your
any
lines.
corrosive material is going to corrode. But here's another thing that maybe not a lot of people know about as well. If you have, say, .3 fluid in your lines and you've only got .4 around, if you're don't just top it off and mix fluids because those fluids do and they can react together and they can
Explode.
not explode, but they'll increase they can start to corrode essentially your components.
yeah, you don't want to mix
they
oil.
react negatively together. It's not a violent reaction. It's very passive, but it happens.
It can cause problems.
So, again, if you are going to do that, flush out the .3 and then replace it with, say, your .4. You might even think about replacing your seals at that point because they are porous, and have that in there as well.
You also might want to replace your lines at that point, too.
Nah, fuck
Depending on if your lines are bad.
Well, but hang on. If
it's
you
an old
flushed
70s
out,
bike and
if
it's
you
the
had
70s
.3 fluid in the brake lines and you flushed it out, it's still going to have some .3 fluid in there.
I know. I'm not saying like
just
wring
use
it out.
.3
I'm
fluid
not saying
and let's
wring it
move
around
on.
dry.
And then you have this mixture that's potentially explosive. And
It's
you
not
just
explosive. I said reactive. It's
Evan's always taking it to extremes.
No, you're the one who said it could explode.
I was joking.
I don't want to give out bad advice here because if somebody's riding and they blow their front tire off because of
all
our
right.
advice,
The only thing you should get out of the
get
conversation is don't just top off with say.
Don't listen to
.4
Evan
and
is
your
what you should
.3.
get out of this.
Just know that there can be it's a negative effect doing so. Be safe and don't do that.
If
You're
it
messing
says-
with the important part of your system, which is brakes.
If it says .3, then use .3. If it says .4, use .4. If it says .5, use .5.
Yeah.
Just go by
This is
that.
what happens when you
Go
ask
Art.
a question. You have to go check the pH balance.
For your fork oil,
For
recommend or refer to your manual.
Yeah,
If
it's
you
usually
have,
like 5.
well, there's
like-
different weights. There's 7, there's 5, there's 15.
Yeah.
If your manual says use, say 7, and you've done that, and you still think your front end's a little soft, go up to 15, and that'll stiffen it a little.
Or just use ATF on any.
Hang
of
on,
those
I
and
have a
it'll
question
work.
about ATF because I didn't know that. But there's different types of ATF, right?
It's all there. The only
matter?
reason people use ATF because it's a similar weight as fork oil. It's a really thin weight.
But there's different types of ATF for Ford, Chevy.
yeah, but
Yeah,
I don't
like,
know. I don't know
like
what
Dextron,
Dextron, like
Mercon.
yeah. I mean, it's
type
it's
F,
all,
type A, type D.
Well, no, I have to use GM ATF. It's
Yeah,
different
I mean,
from Ford.
it's
So what if I have a Japanese bike?
no. I mean, it's not going to. You're not using the transmission, automatic transmission fluid for its purpose that has all of those different additives for those specific applications.
Yeah,
You're
it
using
makes
it
sense.
simply because of its weight. So it's not going to react any differently. Say with
You're using it as a
between-
hydraulic fluid.
Yeah.
It's not like the transmission fluids that are
No, it makes
specific
sense.
to Fords and Chevys are going to
That's
react
kind
inside
of a
your
cool
forks.
hack if you're in a pinch and you need to
Yeah.
Yeah.
find something.
Because most gas stations will have
Yeah, they'll
transmission
have-
fluid
they have
and not
ATF.
have fork oil.
That reminds
Yeah.
me of like pulling a toilet paper roll out of the oil filter in that car, in that 59.
That sounds cool. That's
They
a
used to
that's a
do
story
that.
for another
Yeah.
time, though. I think.
Or you would, or put stuff a bunch of tampons in them.
Never heard of that modification, but it probably does the same thing as the toilet paper.
Probably.
Other fluids, guys? Anything else?
Well, Evan's bike's had a lot of fluids on it, but we don't need to go down.
You need a black light.
Oh man. Oh boy.
You want to go home? You want to get out of here? All right. So I think that covers fluids. Refer to your manual on when to check those.
Yeah. Please do not tell me that was the first little dash, the topic we're
That
gonna be
was the
talking
first
on.
little dash.
We're fucked.
Okay. So now that we have fluids covered, we're going to move on to chains.
So there's a couple different chains. There's your main drive chain, primary chain, cam chain. You basically looking at your main drive chain. You want to look for the chain being dry, or look for kinks that are in the chain, or stretched out. Those would be signs that you just want to replace your chain. Some people swear by keeping your chain oiled. I personally have never oiled a chain in my life.
Well, I mean, people don't swear by it. You're supposed to.
You're
do that.
supposed to. I have done,
I just
I have
replace
run,
chains.
I have run the life of a chain.
I'm just saying.
No, wait, listen to this. I have run a chain throughout its entire life, both oiling it, lubing it regularly, and then also never touching it. And it noticeably lasts longer if you lube it correctly.
Yeah.
It does make a difference.
Well, I'm not saying not to oil it. I'm just saying.
No, you're saying not to oil.
I'm not saying not to oil it. I'm just saying pay attention to it, and then if you need to get a new chain, then get a new chain.
No, it's not like something you replace every time you get gas. Like you're supposed to. If you lube it, it will last longer.
I'm not doubting that. I'm just saying I'm too lazy to do that, and
well,
I would
then
rather
don't give
buy
that
a new
advice,
chain.
and don't other people swear by it. Let me tell you the real stuff.
So, long story short, if you commission Jared Youngers to build you a bike, make sure and check the chain.
No, I will put a brand. If you commission me to build you a bike, I put a brand new chain on
by
it.
the
That
time
is
that
oiled.
thing gets to Denver, that chain's gonna have rusted off.
Well, okay. Another thing is, aside from regularly lube your chain, it will increase the life of the chain.
Do you lube
and
your
performing.
chains?
I do not as often as I should, but
I lube my chains every night, and they last forever.
All right, that's awesome.
Talking about maintenance here. Did you have
My CB750 had an automatic chain lubing system in it, so
Yeah, I never really trusted
I've
those.
never tried one
They
of
more
those.
just leak. It's just a leak spot.
Yeah, it's just like a little oil pump, and
my
it
Harley
blasts
leaks
oil
oil,
on
therefore
the
it has an
It's
automatic
like a
chain.
little high fiber, like
Yeah.
fiber sponge that seeps in.
There's a company that
Yeah.
makes a Scott Oiler. That's what I'm thinking of. Have you seen those?
Mm-mm.
There's a company called, I'm pretty sure it's right, Scott Oiler, and they're like a system, and they have a couple different levels of it. One of them is like you have to push a button. It's got a little electric pump, and it runs a little tube down your swing arm to right above the chain, and then you push the button, and it like blasts oil on the chain. And then they have their like top level system. Yeah, anytime you want. You just tap the button and it oils you. And then they have their top level system that actually
like a
has
bidet.
it has a LCD. It has a screen that you mount on your handlebars, and it tells you like how much oil's in the tank and the little chain oil tank, and then it tells you when was the last time it was lubed, and then it hooks up to your speedometer, and based on mileage, it automatically lubes it for you. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's
They've
pretty
gotten
cool.
like super advanced. I've never
Yeah.
tried one, but I looked
It's really
into it.
cool, but kind of unneeded.
No, I thought it was kind of ridiculous to actually
Yeah.
do it, but
You-
it was cool. It was interesting.
Another thing with chains, you want to check like chain stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're riding and you hear this clacking around going on you think it's from your chain, check that out. You use the tensioners
it's not
on the
your
back.
valves. I've had
No.
people come in and say, "Oh, my valves are super out of
Well, have
adjustment."
you
And
guys
they have
ever-
like 3
Have
inches
Have you
of
ever
deflection
seen
on
Yeah.
their chain?
Have you seen a chain break before while you're riding?
No, but I've seen.
I've seen the damage that
it's-
it's
I've
caused.
seen damage.
Dude,
it's
remember
caused.
One Arm Rob, Ian? Remember that? My buddy, One Arm Rob.
Dirt bike day,
So-
one arm rob.
Yeah, I was riding with One Arm Rob when the chain broke. One hand Rob, really. So I had told him I used to ride with this guy all the time. He had this old KZ 440 LTD, his piece of shit,
How'd you
in
clutch?
college, and I always told him you could hear him. We'd be. He had a little rocker, throttle rocker. So he'd just like push the throttle. So we'd be riding,
How'd he
and every
front
time
brake?
he would shift, you'd hear the chain slap, and it would jump teeth on the back sprocket. And I was like, "Dude, you have to adjust that. You're going to destroy your chain." And he's like, "No, I'll get to it. I'll get to
your
it."
sprocket.
So he calls me. He calls me one day, and I wasn't with him when it happened, but I went and picked him up and put the bike in my truck. He was on the 805 going up to Sorrento Valley, and on the freeway, the chain let loose. Not even at the master link, it just broke in one of the links. The chain whipped around the front sprocket so hard it flipped underneath the motor, and it punched a hole the size of your fist in the bottom of the case.
Man.
It missed his boot by an inch. I mean, it was crazy.
That is
The hole
insane.
was this big. It just
man.
crushed the bottom
He's
of the motor.
measuring about 3 inches on his fingers.
It was
right
like
now.
around there.
That's
You-
his go-to
It
measurement.
You want
It
to
was. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the guy who has one hand to begin with, and he was at my house one time. He's like,
Give
"Oh,
me
hey,
half a jumping
I gotta
jack."
clean my chain." So he puts the bike on the center stand, starts it, puts the bike in second gear, so the rear tire is just whizzing in the air, and then he takes with his good hand, takes a rag and goes to clean the chain with the motor
No.
turning the rear tire at 40 miles an hour. And I'm sitting there and my jaw drops and I'm like, You want to lose your other fucking hand? What are you doing? He almost got the chain stuck, or his rag stuck in the chain and ripped his hand into the sprocket. It was unbelievable. I'm like,
man
dude,
he deserves no limbs.
what are you doing? And he's like, oh, what? I was just going to clean my chain. And I'm like, dude, that thing's going to clean your clock if you get a rag in there.
There was this chick that came into the guys next door to our shop, SD Moto. She came in. She's like, yeah, I was riding around, and then like it just felt like my bike wasn't really pulling anywhere, but it still was working. And she's like, I think there might be something wrong with the engine. We look at the chain, and it was a Honda CB200T, and so it had the chain guard, not the actual chain guard, but the little chain guard
sprocket cover,
the sprocket cover on there still, which we usually take those all off. But her chain jumped off the sprocket, but had gotten lodged in between the guard and the sprocket.
Was it a metal guard?
Yeah, and it was still driving the bike.
Yeah. It was completely. It hopped off all of the teeth. It was off the sprocket completely.
So how was it still driving the
because
bike?
it was jammed in there, and so it had enough force to still pull it around.
Wow.
Yeah.
She rode it to the shop like that.
Did it destroy the sprocket? How did it chewed up the sprocket? Right?
Actually, the teeth were fine.
Really?
It was replaced anyways because it was a legit mechanic.
Yeah, legit
shop.
business. He oils chains there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Saver things work. You know that you put on the front sprocket in case the chain breaks.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, they
Not
usually
familiar.
have them on. The,
You use
they
them on
usually
dirt
have
bikes
them,
a
like,
lot.
on the sprocket cover, front sprocket cover. I can't imagine. I'm sure it can like deflect it, but it won't like take the brute force of it. Yeah, because it's just aluminum.
But
or some of them are like maybe.
I think
like,
if you actually have a chain brake,
that can flex more. Like aluminum will just breaks.
if you have a chain brake and whip off the front sprocket, there is nothing in hell that is going to save the motor.
Yeah,
that has so much force behind it. It's crazy. It would saw one of your limbs off if that wrapped around your foot. I mean, it would just like.
Oh yeah,
it's insane how dangerous that is.
So don't ride in sandals, basically.
That's part of it. Well, really, adjust your chain. That's what it all comes down to.
So
adjust your chain regularly.
And the adjustment that I go by is if I can get more of like an inch of deflection on the lower side of the chain, that's like kind of where I want it to be. I don't want it to be
2 fingers.
2 fingers.
Yeah, or like 2 finger. Like when it's.
I always measure. I always do it from like the side under the swing arm. So if I can move it up or down more than an inch, if there's more than
that's
that
safe.
slack, then that's too loose. But if it moves less than half an inch,
it's like 2 fingers. I mean, depending on your fingers, but
that's an inch.
It's an inch and a half.
Okay, so that's right in there. Whatever.
Yeah.
But it's
2
total
fingers is
deflection, like it's up and down movement. You want
Yeah.
to look at how far the chain will actually move. But the spec in the owner's manual sometimes will tell you to take that measurement with it on the side stand. Some will tell you to do it with if it has a center stand with a tire in the air. It totally depends on the bike how they actually say to measure it.
Yeah.
So you want to check that.
Yeah, and it's not like there's a small tolerance capacity. What am I looking for?
I don't know. I don't know what you're doing.
I don't know what you're.
Yeah, there's not like a very small tolerance as far as like the slack. Say if you're like slightly over or slightly under that, you're not going to snap your chain, but
you just don't want it extremely tight to where you can't move it, and you don't want it so loose that you can like pull it off of
you're
the back
slapping.
sprocket.
Well, and if you get to the point where you're hearing a note, like when you change gears and the chain unloads and you hear a slap when it re-engages in the next gear, then you definitely have to take a look at it because that's your danger sign that if you keep doing that and without adjusting it, you're gonna destroy the chain.
Yeah, and with new chains as well, they have a bit of like a break-in period, and so they will slack up much faster than say a chain that's been worn in. So after a new chain, I'll usually put, even after like 20 miles on it, it'll stretch significantly, and you want to readjust it.
Yeah, and keep
an eye on that for a couple weeks after a new chain.
Another thing, so when putting on a new chain, you want to set your tensioners. You want to put your chain on and then have your tensioners like pretty far backwards, pretty far out, so that you have the room to tighten it up to pull the chain back out. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Instead of putting your chain on and having your tensioners like in the middle or less, you want them in the middle or out more. just so that you have that extra adjustment because the chain is going to stretch.
Yeah, you need to expect it to stretch a little bit.
But
keep in mind, like if you're adjusting a chain and your tensioners are at the end of their travel, your chain is just about worn out. So it's safer to replace it at that point than to keep using it.
Yeah, and another thing too is you want to make sure that your chain is clean as well. Usually, like when you lube your chain, that's usually the time when you take the time to clean it as well, and get all the debris off. Or if you've been in the dirt, after that, when you're at a place where you can do it, clean your chain off, because all that dirt and grime that's on it will increase wear, not only to your chain but to your sprocket as well.
Both sprockets.
So,
and don't lube the chain just before you're going to go ride in dirt.
Yeah.
Another. You want to check your primary chain,
which is what Cam does every single time we go ride dirt bikes. We're about to go ride in the desert, and he unloads an entire can of lube on his chain, and then picks up an entire desert's worth of dirt on the chain.
Or one of those nerds ropes.
It's bad. You'll look like Luke after coming back from picking up power converters with your friends. I just watched Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
So each of those chains have specs that you want to refer to in your manual. So check those, but those are good preventative maintenance things that you want to check. What's the next one?
None of this is helpful. We're on fire tonight with the jokes. So.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a two-parter on this.
What's the next one?
Brakes.
You want to check? Well, for brakes, we already kind of went over doing your brake fluid, but you want to take a look at your pads. Take your pads off. If they're wearing unevenly, you might want to put some new pads in there, especially in the front.
Well, if they're wearing uneven, or if they're wearing
you have
unevenly,
other problems.
You want to find out what's causing that. More than likely, your rotor is warped,
or your alignment is
off.
Yeah,
and so you want to.
I always buy just mid. Well, this is for my car.
I never spend a ton of money on brake pads.
EBC.
I usually get
buy
EBC.
EBC. I mean, they're readily available.
A good price point.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's not something you want to skimp out and buy.
Yeah.
It's not a... Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like a bargain.
But there's no need to go spend, especially on an older bike, don't go spend a ton of money and get the, organic brake pads. They're, ceramic or whatever, where they're...
Farm raised.
Even on my truck.
Free range brake pads.
Even on my truck, I just get the mid-grade brake pads because they're just as good. And
Didn't the brakes go out on your truck recently?
That was on the Ford. That was on the 1972 Ford, and it had a bad master cylinder and brake booster that I replaced. So,
or did?
Yeah, I don't know too much about dirt bike stuff, but
Doesn't make a big difference. So sand can fall through the slots. They'll chew up the rotor otherwise.
I never really noticed
good.
a difference. Yeah. I don't even remember the last time I put brake pads on a dirt bike.
But
do brake pads do dirt bikes use brakes?
they have power slide.
Yeah.
But
you don't wear them out all that fast.
Yeah,
I mean, they'll last.
Yeah.
Brakes. If you have a drum in the rear, you got to take out the hub and check the drums, and you want to make sure that the shoes. You want to make sure the shoes have a good amount of padding still on them. You want to check the inside,
and
of
the activator rod. I don't know what you call it, is tensioned correctly, so the brakes grab at the right point.
Yeah. That adjusts where you're. Pretty much that'll adjust your pedal. When it's actually engaging.
Yeah.
So that can be also a personal preference thing. I mean, don't have it so you have to push your foot down 5 inches and
or
starts
that your
to engage.
Foot is on your heel when it's on the freaking peg.
Or have it set too much so you drag the brakes
exactly.
with your foot at rest position. Another thing, check the especially if you have an older bike with the original brake lines, check the rubber lines because they can get soft spots in them where the line will flex like severely, and you'll lose a ton of your braking power because the line's flexing instead of the pad moving.
You also want to check for dry rot and cracks in those rubber lines too.
This is with any hosing or any
but
tubing.
Yeah, especially on these older bikes.
But that's where it makes a difference, where if you have old brake lines that are flexing a lot, I mean, you would see a noticeable improvement just going to new rubber lines, but also going to a set of stainless brake lines can make a noticeable improvement.
Yeah.
On some bikes.
There's much less flex in those lines.
Right.
It actually increases the hydraulic force that is you're applying to the
But if your brake
piston.
system is already in great shape and everything's working well, that's not really a huge upgrade, you know? Yeah. They're a good improvement, I guess, but yeah, anyways. And check, I think we already said that, but check for leaks, check your calipers and everything. Make sure
your
there's no leaks
in your master cylinders. And
we have timing. Corroded points, bad condensers, and the timing set correctly.
Yeah, I think this is more so. Yeah, I mean it's usually around like say
I think 2,000 miles,
3,500 miles. I think.
Well,
around 3,500 miles, kind of go through and check your points. If they don't need to be changed or if they don't need to be adjusted, don't touch them. It's more so just something to check, and it may not be. It's one of those things that. It will gradually go out of adjustment. So you may not know, like, just get off the bike, next day jump on the bike, and like, oh, my timing's way off. It's more something that gradually goes off as it wears longer. And so this is just kind of a reference point. So, okay, you know what, it's about this time. Say every second oil change. Which is probably more like 7,500 miles, not 35. Maybe just go in, and we have a podcast to explain on how the ignition timing. So maybe go back and check that out and adjust your points according if they need to be adjusted. So that's just kind of a reference point. Say, just something in your mind, like when I'm doing maintenance, this is one thing to check. And it doesn't hurt to constantly check those. If you want to do that work, that is no problem. It's not going to do anything but benefit you.
Yeah, you're also looking for corrosion on the actual surface of the points. This is more of like the maintenance part of it. Sometimes the points, you'll have like a divot on one side and like a mound on the other, I guess. There's technical terms for that. But it'll kind of wear into each other. At that point, they have points files, and you can file those back down. There will be a point though where it's so bad that you just want to put new points on the bike. You want to check your condensers, like especially if you're riding, or if one of your points isn't working, if one of your cylinders isn't firing, a condenser could be the problem.
Yeah, that's not really preventative maintenance.
I'm just saying you want to check those.
Well, all that stuff is cheap, so
yeah,
you know, if it's questionable, it's not an expensive thing to replace.
And when you're in there setting your points too, you also want lube the points.
Condensers are very black and white. It's either working or it's not.
Okay, so you lube your points, and you need to check your advance mechanism, make sure all the springs and everything in there are still working and proper, and you lube that. That's pretty much all I got for timing.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot there. Let's talk about valve adjustments. There'll be a spec for how often that should be done. Do you guys have like a recommendation on when to do that? Like 10,000 miles, maybe?
Yeah, 10,000 miles or so. And that is another thing that will gradually go out of alignment.
Yeah,
that's something.
That's not to say that
you
won't
should
have
check on a new
bike.
I think you should check the valves when you get a bike that's new to you. You should check the valves, even if the guy you bought it from says he already did it. I would check on just so you know that they are in perfect in spec when you start.
Yeah, but this is a preventative maintenance. This isn't necessarily.
Well,
I'm trying to keep us on topic.
No, but if you have a baseline, then you know the change.
Oh,
you know?
I agree 100% with you.
But then regardless, I mean, if you checked them when you started with the bike, then if you checked it at 10,000 miles, you know it was in spec when you started. So, you know, but anyway, okay. What do you want me to say?
I'm just watching you go off, man.
Anyways, but if you start hearing some weird noise from the top end, like ticking, or
don't wait for the 10,000 mile mark.
Don't
to
put
check
it off. Pull it off and check them out.
Yeah, and we did realize that we have yet to do a podcast on valve adjustments.
Yeah, we'll go into detail about that later.
We'll probably do that. Oh, and so what's the next one we got?
Let's see. We'll talk about tires. Dry rot, bald tires are the wear marker, and check your tire pressure. So dry rot, I mean, you know, if you've had the bike and been riding it for a while, then dry rot's not really going to just appear if you're using it regularly, and if it's garaged. That is something that comes up from a bike sitting for a long time.
Yeah, it usually takes about a year to get dry rot.
But you'll see like cracks in the sidewall, and the tire is just not like pliable anymore. Like it starts to get kind of brittle, and you'll see like cracks develop along the sidewall and coming off the tread. And you know, you kind of have to decide how bad it is. Like, it's not necessarily going to explode right away.
I always
but
recommend don't even ride it. Replace those.
It's a lot safer.
It's one of those things like, yeah, it'll work, but when it doesn't work, it's not a fun story.
I've never popped a tire riding a bike, but I'm sure that it would be scary as hell.
Oh my god, dude!
Well, yeah, another thing with dry rot too.
You have it happen one time, and you'll never screw with it again. It
separates.
Yeah,
and that's a violent.
Yeah.
A violent scenario to be in. That's some serious domestic abuse.
I had that rear tire go out on the KLR at fully loaded at 80 miles an hour, and it was the scariest thing I've ever gone through on a motorcycle. It was unbelievable to have the tire go flat.
So that's just something that, and generally the rear tire will wear down much faster than the front tire. I would say every 2 rear tires, the front tire is about to go.
Yeah.
And there are on most tires there are say markers in the tread that kind of they're like wear points. So when the tread goes down to a certain point, there will be, say, these little kind of
guides.
Grooves.
Yeah, guides like that's actually slashes. Rubber. It is rubber. It's in the mold. That once that kind of is exposed to the surface of the ground and it's flush, say, with the rest of the tread pattern, that's like a wear indicator.
That's Mr. Chang Shen telling you to change your tire.
Yeah.
Change your tires.
And check your pressure as well. I mean, you should do it once a month, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ever check it.
I usually do it. Like,
to be honest, I don't until I notice it low. But
I check them when I go on like a ride. If I'm going to go on a long ride, something over 100 miles, I'll check them. But I mean, every time I walk up to my bike, I don't consciously do it, but in my subconscious,
you're kind of looking at it.
Over
you would
to
notice
make sure,
it.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, there's no, my tires don't look low. I don't see a pool of oil leaking anywhere.
One thing I just thought of:
so
look for irregular wear. Like with this, okay, when I bought that BMW, the Purple Dragon, the rear tire that was on it had a set of Michelins on it, and the rear tire, you remember that, Ian? The rear tire was square. So, like, it had been ridden so much just on the freeway without using the sidewall at all. So the tire had a complete flat spot in it. I mean, it was perfectly flat.
That
in the
happens
center.
if you're doing burnouts,
and, and I kept riding it. I kept riding it to the point that I actually, like, got down to the cord of the tire.
Oh, man.
Remember that trip when we were coming back from home?
If you can see cord, you should definitely just go
it wasn't
straight
like
to
that,
a tire.
but I kept
Yeah,
pushing.
that's your
it.
last resort wear mark.
And then I put on new tires that were actually round, and I remembered, like, the bike felt so unstable because it would actually turn. And I was like, God, what is going on? I thought something was wrong when I rode it home.
Are you talking about Falcor?
Yeah.
Falcor.
I put on new Shinkos at Ian's house, and I was riding it home, and the thing would actually like lean, and I thought I was going to crash. Like I thought something was wrong, and then I realized, oh no, I just lost my Flintstone like square tire on the rear. So it's actually a motorcycle now. But anyway, so yeah, check for where like that the tire tread is wearing properly, and I guess if you've been riding it on the entire set of tires, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
that only happened because it was bad when I got it.
And if there's, say, excess wear where it's wearing down, say, you think it might be wearing down a little too fast, check for your rear tire alignment. It could be, it could be out of alignment to where it's adding another axis movement instead of around, to where it's just increasing
Sideways.
the wear. Yeah, it's adding that sideways
Axis.
I
thought you
Which,
said
if that's
access.
happening, your chain is not moving straight over the sprocket anyway. So you're eventually going to
more
wear
than
out your
just that.
sprocket and
Yeah.
chain.
And then your brake pads too.
Yeah. Well, that's why they put the guides on the side of the swing arm to make sure you set it straight. So
Yeah.
make sure you
You know
have
what?
things set identically.
I just found out about those recently.
That's something you don't tell the world about. Man.
Yeah.
Hey, I would
Expert bike builder, Jared Yar.
Hey,
is
no,
here.
no. I would measure it. prior and make them the same. Like,
You never noticed the like little hash marks in the side of it?
I noticed it, but I didn't ever notice the marker on the swing arm.
Yeah.
So I would always measure and get them, the same. But,
Yeah.
But I never.
Well, I guess it's probably even safer to actually just measure it, but they just give you a quick way to set it evenly on each side.
All right, what's next?
Clutch. So clutch adjustment, checking the clutch plates and the cable.
Making sure.
I mean, I don't
moves freely.
Yeah, the only adjustment I've ever messed with really is on the just adjusting the cable so the pull is correct and there's enough little free play at rest. There's probably a spec in the manual for that. Most of it's just kind of by
personal
feel,
preference,
yeah,
I'd
wherever,
say. Some
however
people
much
like it to
free play you
start
like.
engaging, say like right as you release. Some people like it halfway out,
Yeah.
and other people like to slip their clutch and have it all the way at the end.
So there's not unless you're noticing problems with the clutch, I don't think it's like a regular maintenance thing that you need to be checking the plates to see their wear or anything. It's just if
Usually
everything's
that's
working
something-
correctly, you're
when
fine.
your clutch starts slipping, usually of course it starts at higher RPM. When your clutch starts slipping, I would definitely check to see maybe if your clutch cable needs to be adjusted some. Maybe it's has too much tension on it. Check that first, and then if that is within spec or you're within your preference without causing an issue that will cause, then you might want to think about replacing your clutch plates.
Yes.
Another little, I don't know if I want to tell people this, then they might do it. Another little
Now you have to.
Another thing you can do is this is pretty much like a little hot rod thing to do is instead of say like buying racing like clutch springs, you can add some extra tension on there by adding some large washers.
On the bolts,
in between the bolts and the spring.
Yeah.
And so you increase
Preloads
the
the
preload
spring.
of the spring, so it's a much firmer clutch and more grab on the clutch as well.
That's what we've been needing to do to the green 750 that we never did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We probably won't do it anymore since I wrecked on it.
Yeah. Did you ever look at those parts?
No, I got other things going on
Sweet.
in my head right now.
Sweet.
let's talk about carbs, sinking and mixture screws.
We just did an awesome
We've
episode
covered
on
carburetors
carbs.
in detail on the last 2 episodes, so there's way more info there than we could even go into right now for any sort of maintenance stuff.
But over time, your carbs do go out of sync. So it's, every now and then.
But I don't even know how to tell you like what interval to do that at. Like it would only be when you notice maybe the bike not running correctly.
Yeah,
I
and
guess.
usually like a symptom, a first initial symptom of like your carbs possibly being out of sync is if it's kind of a inconsistent idle.
Yeah, erratic.
Yeah.
That will usually be if, say, the bike has been running every day, so there's not really a chance of, like, say, clogging up or fuel filters. I mean, that could be related to carbs, I guess, or fuel delivery. Is say if you have like inline fuel filters on the bike, you want to check those and they're cheap too. If they're questionable, you can replace them. They can, if they are collecting stuff from the gas tank. They can get to the point where they've collected so much they actually start to cause a clog, or you can see that it is possibly could cause one and replace it so you don't have to get stuck somewhere or be crafty on the side of the road.
Yeah. Also with carbs, I mean, periodically you want to. I think we covered this in the last one, but you want to check like your intake boots too, because those will dry. Those are rubber, so they'll crack and they'll rot, and which could create vacuum leaks, which will also just make your bike perform poorly or not at all. That's another thing to kind of look for.
Air filters. Not really a whole lot to say there, other than check them. Every month or 2 or 3 and see that they're not getting super dirty. If it's if you're able to clean it out. If you have a K&N or something that's easy to clean and reuse, or a foam filters are easy to clean.
I found on one thing I found recently on dirt bike, but it still applies, on a bike I bought for my girlfriend that had been sitting for a while. When I pulled that foam air filter out, it literally disintegrated in my hands.
Yeah.
Like it had just been in there so long it broke apart. So some might want to check on an older bike.
Yeah, no, that's totally... I mean, and those are paper element filters for the most part, so if it's the same filter from 1978, a good chance that it's going to just be useless now. So,
or you might take off the airbox.
You don't want to wash those paper
Yamaha
filters
and find
either.
a piece of foam just crammed in the airbox instead of a filter.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to do it. Yeah. So, just check it, clean it if it needs it. If you haven't been riding anywhere with a lot of dust or dirt, it's, on the street, they really don't get dirty very quickly.
Have you heard that no coil? Ever used that? I found really good air filter cleaner and lube. I used to use the spray stuff, but there's this company called No Toil that makes this it's like powder almost, and you mix it in water, and it'll extend the life of your filters like crazy amount.
Cool. I'll have to check that out. The filters the foam filters that we put on our builds, they're pretty inexpensive to the point where, you use them, you run them for 10,000 miles or whatever, and then just buy new ones and put them on.
Yeah, or if you have a backfire and it catches them on fire.
Yeah.
That's happened to me one
or
time.
Or if you tear it, like if you've got a hole in it, you want to replace that filter.
Yeah, and a lot with the foam filters, I mean, it's when if it's been in the sun a lot, it can kind of just break it down.
They become brittle.
Yeah, and they can tear easily, so check for tears. Any kind of, essentially that is an air leak coming in, and it could cause your bike to run erratically.
Lean.
Yeah, inefficient. So.
It'll change your mixture, basically.
Cables. You want to check that your cables are not dry. They should be lubed. Again, I don't really know how often, but I will usually do it about once. Honestly, about once a year is how often I've ever done it.
That sounds pretty standard.
Because
I usually go by feel. Like,
yeah, you can tell when they start sticking.
When it's a new cable, it glides and it's nice and free. And then when you got like kind of a crusty cable, you can sometimes even hear it like creaking through, and it pulls. It doesn't pull as smooth. You want to inspect the unsheathed areas because that's where it's going to break most of the time.
Yeah,
because it has the contact with your
check
throttle
that they're
body.
not frayed at all. Because a lot of times the wire strands will start to fray. And then you're on your way. It won't move smoothly, and then it's going to break. Once it starts to fray, just replace it. Don't waste any time.
I've had a throttle cable break on me getting off the freeway. and I pulled over, and somehow I was able to rig the return cable as the pull, so I had to throw it forward, but I was able to make it work to get home.
Yeah, I was like 20 miles away from my house, and my clutch cable broke on me.
Yeah.
So I was like trying to rig it. I was able to get it to like a parts store, and of course, I mean, I wasn't expecting him to have it. I didn't even ask him. I even bought like those little needle nose vice grips to try to clamp onto the broken cable and manually like just force it open. But I do not have that kind of strength to even do that, and so I ended up having to just stall out the bike at stoplights, and then with my finger on the start button, just jam it into first gear, and
limp all the way home.
Yeah, well, no, I mean it's and just to get it to start again, so like kind of push with my finger on it, and then once it started to get up, then I would go, and then I just have to mash the gears without a clutch.
Because you can shift without a clutch if you do it at the right.
If you rev match it correctly, it's not that big of a deal. I remember in college one time on my first bike, a little shitty old Suzuki trail bike, and I broke I think it was the throttle cable, and I didn't want to spend the money on a new one, so I went to Home Depot and I bought a thumb throttle lever that you would use for like a lawnmower, and it had this tiny little cable and a little plastic mount for a thumb lever, and I rigged it up on the bike. No. It was horrible.
You probably spent
I broke
the
it
same
too,
amount or more on that than you would have just buying a new cable.
Yeah, I wasted a lot of time on it too, but it worked for a couple days. And to lube the cables, you can get Motion Pro makes a really cheap cable luber. It's a little aluminum thing that will hold the cable in the open position, and it's got a nozzle for a straw, so you can squirt the lube down into the cable. But if you don't want to buy one of those, they're only like $10 or something. If you don't want to buy one, you can always hang the cable in the air and use like a plastic bag, like a sandwich Ziploc bag, and so you have the cable open, so it's like the cable's pulled up out of its sheath, and then you can zip tie or tape the bag around the cable body, and then just fill it up with lube and let it hang, and the lube will start to drip down through the cable, and when it starts to drip out the bottom, then you're
I've
good.
even used just like a lube in a spray can, not WD-40, but like a silicone lube, or like what's that? What's the yellow can of
Deep Creep?
I don't know.
Oil?
Yeah, like a penetrating oil.
PB blaster?
No, I don't know. Maybe that would work. And just
a generic lubricant.
Just take the throttle cable and spray the open part and kind of spray down in there and run it back and forth and do the other side and just do it a bunch of times, or even open up the throttle cable while it's still on the bike and just spray it in there and a couple times, and the old. Yeah.
Yeah, the old
maneuvers.
Just unsheath your cable and lube it. It's pretty simple. It's a simple procedure. It's just a rule of thumb. Spark plugs.
I usually change my spark plugs every time I do an oil change.
Really?
That's excessive.
No, I just don't.
What, you made them money over there?
They're like
I
buy the
$3
champion
a piece.
ones.
Jeez, you're like that guy. You're like the little guy from Monopoly. You're just like,
no.
Spark plugs grow on trees. Well, I'm just gonna go to my golden spark plug tree in the backyard and grab a couple.
I don't know.
What's that guy's name? Like Dr. Money or something?
I would always just have them around, and they're a couple bucks, and you don't have to worry about it.
It adds up over his lifetime. He is gonna have wasted $20,000 on spark plugs.
No, like $50 maybe. I can put it 5 cent. Well, that's not that much.
You could be buying us all in and out for the money that you've thrown at spark plug.
It's
wasteful.
Some things to look for, though, when you're looking at your spark plugs. It's good to pull them out every once in a while and just inspect them. But if you have like corrosion or rust on them, get rid of them, get new ones.
Yeah, at that time, if it's gotten to that point, you're going to have issues. It's not just going to be... You're just going to run into it when you decide to do maintenance on it.
If it's a bike you're riding regularly, you're very rarely going to get a rusty spark plug. Yeah. That's only going to happen from sitting and getting wet.
Yeah. But like we say, like a lot of these bikes have sat, and so maybe they're doing preventative maintenance when they're going to start the bike. I don't know.
But you're right. But that's not.
But then we're off topic.
Hey, you know what? I'm just helping everyone. Okay.
It's just...
Well, that's what this whole series of Motorbike Mondays is. Each one, we're progressively
I like to give back,
people.
okay? I like to give back to my community.
You can still do that. We're doing that right now in every single episode.
All right, next one.
That's the last one on the list.
Is there another page?
I'm on the last page. You have bolt check, and then you also have a line, and then make tight.
Yeah. Check all your bolts.
So check out your bolts and make them tight.
Yeah, make sure everything's tight.
God, this episode's a clusterfuck.
Yeah. Well, if you can't tell, we are just scraping the bucket for topics. So
yeah, give us ideas if you have ideas.
We have asked before, and we really do want to keep doing this. This is fun, and we do feel like we are giving to the community of the motorcycle culture. And we want to keep doing it, and hopefully some of you still want us to. So it is very difficult each week or maybe each episode. We don't do this consistently a week, but
we tried to. We couldn't think of ideas fast enough.
Yeah, so it is very difficult to come up with topics to talk about. So. You may know of topics that say that you've run into that you might need some help on, and you might think is a good topic for the show.
Well, let me read this email. We have some topics here.
So, like this gal or gentleman has done. So, don't leave it up to someone else to do it. It's really easy just to send a simple email saying, "Hey." It could just you don't even have to say, "Hey." You can just put this, and this for topic ideas. It would help us out a lot, and hopefully we can help you out from that help.
Helping is helping.
Let's read some emails here.
Is helping.
Justin, that owns Volta Sound Company, sent us an email and said he's working on his first build, a 75 CB360. He had some trouble with a lot of oil coming out of the top-end breather hose. So after listening to some of the podcasts, he decided to try and fix it and learn some things. He cracked the engine open and, to his surprise, found both top rings were broken in half and the cam chain slide guide had been eaten in half by the timing chain. He just got the engine back together. Oh, I guess he's telling us the story. He wasn't asking questions. And he's going to be tuning the carbs. He was asking about how to bench seek the carbs. I already sent him a link to the episodes on carbs. So anyways, he had a couple ideas here for some new podcasts. Proper jetting, how do you increase or decrease jets when doing pods? And this was before that episode posted, so I sent him that. He asked about top-end rebuilds. Can we talk about that? Checking the cam journals, valves and cleaning/seating, rings and proper sizes, and cylinder honing tips. So those are some things we'll keep in mind. Some of those we haven't really talked about, so we'll definitely do an episode about valves.
Yeah, top end rebuild. That's a pretty that's a good
top
one.
End would be good for sure.
I've brought that up before.
So we'll definitely keep that in mind. He sent us some pictures I need to post too. And then let's see here. We had another email. Let me see. Oh, no, that was Robert who had that one bike. You guys know him, right? Or Roberto. Yeah, you guys know him.
Oh, Roberto. If you have my phone number, hold on, Roberto. If you have my phone number still, shoot me a text message because I think I may have figured out what was wrong with your bike when it was in our shop.
Yeah.
So send me a text message.
Those are those wicked carbs that haunted me.
Yeah, I think we may have figured out why after the fact. So if you hear this, call me or text me and point you in the right direction. Maybe you can take it to somebody up there or check it out for yourself.
Okay, he mentioned, and I posted this on the website. I forgot to tell you guys. Did you guys look at the PDF file about the Cafe Racer building guide?
No, I saw that.
Look at that like this week or this weekend or something. Download the PDF. I posted it on. It's a topic on the website. Download it and read through it. It's kind of interesting. And then let's talk about it a little bit next time.
Okay.
So it's kind of. I mean, there's some good info. Some of it, most of it's just this guy's opinion.
And talk about club and bars.
He talks about all sorts of stuff. Yes, I think there is a club and bar section.
It's cool. That's going to be a really
it's
nasty,
like 30.
episode.
This guy,
I have
he
a lot
made
of
this
opinions
document,
to share.
and it's like 30 pages long, and he goes through like his idea of how to build a cafe racer and all this stuff, and it's like it's pretty cool. It's not like bullshit at all. He's put a lot of work into it.
That's rad.
But so, anyways, look at that, and let's kind of go through it and talk about it. I forgot to bring that up before. But it would be worth it'd probably be an interesting show because people could download the PDF and like look through it, and then we could go through it and discuss it because it's got some cool stuff that we could talk about.
Okay.
Well, what did Roberto say?
He just told me about it because
okay.
I had never saw it. I'd never seen it before, and it was posted on Reddit. And he said, "Hey, I saw this on the Cafe Racer Reddit. You should look at this and tell me, talk about it or whatever. You might think it's interesting."
Was it in the Gone Wild section?
No. So anyways, we'll do that. We'll read that and talk about it. Anyways, that was about it. There was an email from Leroy asking about making a custom oil tank.
Jenkins.
What's that from?
Oh, come on.
What?
Just look up Leroy Jenkins.
Yeah.
Should I know what that is?
World of Warcraft. Epic. All right, guys, we're all gonna go together.
All right. Anyways, so that's about it for tonight. Hope this episode on maintenance stuff helps you out, or is at least kind of funny. And shoot us an email. Check out motorbikemondays.com. Give us some topic ideas, or let us know what you're working on.
Yeah, and the email is
contact@motorbikemondays.com.
There you have it.
There it is.
So check it out, and we will talk to you next week. Oh, and I think Andrew from the Manual is going to join us next week too. That did the interview with us. He's into bikes and cool guy. No, he's in New York, but he's going to Skype in and talk. I've been talking to him. I haven't talked to him on the phone yet, but I've been emailing with him a lot. He's a real cool guy, so I think
we've been entertaining the idea of doing an episode on Triumphs. Having Brady and I have a good buddy who's really big and really into old Triumphs, and
that would be great.
So let us know what you guys think, and maybe we can get him on here. So,
all right. Well, now you guys both have just made it really awkward when those things possibly don't happen.
No,
it won't be that.
We'll figure it out.
That awkward.
Just give it a, and it'll be good.
And thanks to our guest, my brother, for joining us and adding very little to the conversation. It was excellent.
Good commentary.
We almost went out of the way to get a mic for him, and I'm glad we didn't put that extra effort in.
Well, we don't have any more openings on the board.
All right, anyways, this is going downhill fast. We'll talk to you next week.